started. Let's get the word out as well. We are going to get fired up, whether the chat fills up or not. Welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. I am your host, Kalari GXC. There is a lot to talk about. It has been a week of fuckery, y'all, but we're going to talk about it all. But I wanted to start off with the YouTube situation. And why? Because unlike some creators, this will probably be uploaded to YouTube later if they allow it. I'm not a big creator at all. I like everything in my life. I do things slow and steady. I did not want to beg people to follow me on this platform or YouTube. So I believe in growing my audience the way I did on Twitter by just being myself and being open. Doing that means there are going to be times where I drop swear words. There are going to be times where I openly talk about mental health issues, which I do in my sometimes weekly vlog. I'm going to be 100%. I don't always get the content out the way I should. But the problem with this is YouTube seems to forget that in a world of creators being themselves, you are restricting us. And I can't help but think that this restriction is being done on purpose at this point. We have a new government in charge. We have a president who is sick and tired of seeing working class families foot the bill where corporations should be paying, especially for taxes. I knew with a bunch of the infrastructure bills and other things that President Biden was pushing for, that a lot of these corporations were going to start feeling the bill for what they should have been paying for years. And we are seeing how they are strong arming us by firing a bunch of workers. We've seen it in the tech industry, we've seen it in Amazon for Christmas and after. Thousands of jobs being cut because they want to cover their bases. And now with YouTube's new no swear words policy, which is a bunch of garbage, and I'm trying not to curse, but it's getting hard, y'all, because there's a lot of stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. It's not hard to see why they're doing this. If they can get the views, have people still put out the content and not pay them, it is a net win for them. So, point blank, you can be putting your true self on YouTube. Your followings could be watching you, giving you the views, and you will not make a cent from it, and YouTube stands to profit. So it's a mess. And it's sad because a lot of people use both Twitch and YouTube for video gameplays too, and now you can be penalized for that if the gameplay is deemed too violent. Any animation ideas that I have, which are for adults, it's not like it's going to be dirty, nasty sex stuff, but there will be acts of violence, there will be adult humor. I have made it clear from the get go, even starting this Twitch channel, that I am for mature audiences. I am not somebody's babysitter. I am not here to watch people's kids. I am here for, I don't even want to say 18 and older. I tend to prefer people who remember what it's like to carry quarters in their pockets and go into arcades. I'm an older lady. I cater to an older crowd. So it's easy for me, especially somebody who worked in finance, to see what YouTube's doing and why, and see how insidious it is. You have content creators from all over the world. Welcome to the chat, respect, and happy New Year's. You have content creators from all over the world, though, YouTube, and it just doesn't shock me when I see policy changes like this. It just bothers me because you're telling people that they can't be themselves and be monetized, and you really run the risk of content creators looking for other venues. For me, I'm going to stay on Twitch. Twitch doesn't penalize me for dropping the F bomb when I'm talking about a serious topic. Twitch doesn't punish you once you hit affiliate with what you can make. And it troubles me that YouTube is doing this when they know they have a ton of content creators that not only make high quality but fun to watch content, but they do sometimes let loose a swear word. One of my favorites to watch, somebody I've been a subscriber for almost 3 or 4 years now, is Moist Critical. I find Charlie refreshing because he's just himself. He doesn't put on airs. He doesn't put on a fake character voice. You're not going to get like the boogie bullshit from him. He is who he is, and you take him as he is. And he made a comic, God Slap. Me and my boyfriend bought a couple of issues of it because we thought this is neat, you know, we're comic book nerds. And he did an amazing video with an opening sequence with animation that showed some violence, but in the realms of stuff that we're exposed to, isn't even a drop in the iceberg. Wasn't even long enough to where it should have been flagged, and he got demonetized for it. And my brain goes, you're really cutting off a huge source of views at this point because content creators are going to stop putting content on YouTube if we are going to end up being demonetized for it. If you want to turn your platform into something that's more kid and family friendly, that's your right. But you are going to lose content creators in the long run because we shouldn't have to restrict who we are. Welcome to the chat, Blue Phoenix. And not to have to keep talking about the YouTube thing, but it does go hand in hand. Let me see if this is the photo. With a lot of people who were made platform famous on the site. I don't know how many of you in my chat have watched YouTube, but I tend to watch it more than scripted TV now because I tend to be online doing research for stuff. So, as much as I don't like any of the Paul brothers, I try to avoid stuff about them. It always makes me chuckle when I see them get in the antics. One of the things I've warned people about over the years was the whole crypto thing. I knew it was a bubble. I knew the bubble was going to burst because you were telling people to put real money into a fake scheme. One of the people that got involved in that was Logan Paul. He had this crypto zoo thing. Like everybody online who gets themselves involved in something scandalous, eventually people are going to talk about it. In comes CoffeeZilla, who does in-depth dives into internet personalities. He did a 3-part series. He reached out to Logan Paul. He made it clear that he wanted to get all the facts out. And if you watch the 3-part series, he was factual. He didn't personally attack Logan Paul, but what Logan fails to understand and what some of his fans might fail to understand is even if Logan didn't make a ton of money from this scam, you associated your name. Guilt by association is a real thing. I'm talking as a child of people who did kind of nefarious things. One of the things I was warned growing up was doesn't matter your intent. If you're with people who do bad things, you will be guilty by association. If your friend decides one night while you are hanging out to commit a crime and gets in the car with you and you drive off with them, you are an accessory. Your crypto zoo is responsible for over $7 million in lost revenue from people who believed in your company and backed the company based on your name. You can try and threaten to sue people for pointing that out. Say, I didn't make no money. My manager didn't make money. We tried to. You didn't. And you make enough with your cheesy ass prime drink and everything else to pay people back what they lost in that crypto scheme. That hatch an egg and get an ugly ass picture of an animal nonsense that people really fell for. And that's the problem with the digital age currently. There are going to be so many get rich quick schemes out there. A lot of it based on this crypto stuff. And we need to be mindful. It's okay to want to make money. The last few years have not been stable. So I don't blame the people who have invested thinking this is a known person. This is already wealthy person. Why would they lead us astray? Y'all need to understand that if somebody already wealthy is pushing it, they're just trying to get your money so that they don't have to risk their own. And I hate to put it that way, but it always turns out that way. Nobody who's truly successful, sadly, is sharing that. All they're doing is making sure that you funnel your hard earned money into their coffers. Y'all gotta stop falling for these digital get rich quick schemes. Now, this chucklehead, Logan Paul, has decided to pull the bitch ass move. And I know by saying bitch ass move, I'm not getting monetized by YouTube. I don't care. And I'm talking about one of their golden boys at this point. But he's threatening to sue CoffeeZilla for exposing this scam. Oh, you're seeking clout, you're using my name for views, and it's like, dude, people talking about you, whether you like it or not, is a good thing, but you're the only one committing slander at this point. You're the only one whose name was associated to a $7 million scam. And if FTX's debacle hadn't happened, you probably would have been the biggest Bitcoin scam of last year. So instead of trying to salvage your reputation by suing people, you need to make right with all the people who lost millions of dollars through your weird crypto zoo scheme. Well, all you're doing is proving all the research that CoffeeZilla dug up is real. And it's really sickening the way these crypto bros, because that's all Logan Paul is at this point, try to bully and enforce that you just got to see things my way. He tried to force this dude to come on his podcast and berating him because he doesn't want to leave his home in Texas to come to California and be bullied by somebody who's literally known for aggression into saying something that he's not saying. I feel like the narcissism is clear. But what's worse is the fact that this keeps tying into stuff that's already happened. We have seen the tech fallout. Welcome to the chat, HV Daughterless, and thank you for the bits, Blue Phoenix. We have seen so many big personalities lend themselves to these financial schemes. And when the bubble has burst, which it did last year, I don't think people understand how big this burst was. Billions of dollars was lost because people funneled into this weird fantasy of that Bankman Fried kid. And a lot of people lost fortunes, lost their savings, lost income because they really believed in that whole crypto scheme. And Crypto Zoo, while it was definitely not the biggest anymore, was definitely well known because of Logan Paul. And if you don't want your name associated to the scam, don't lend your name to scam. You can't say, oh, the people who worked for me were scammers and they conned me, so I'm the victim. You could be both the victim and the perpetuator of said scam. I know that double talk might work on the 12-year-olds that are the core of your fan base. I know you think that you can double speak your way out of this, but when you are an accessory to something, which he clearly is, he still wants to push that crypto suit. He's talking about how it's still coming out at the end of this year, at the beginning of next year. And I keep going, who is this for? If you were still trying to convince people to buy NFTs, if you were still trying to convince people to put their money into something that is not federally backed, you are running a scam at this point. I say this to my friends as somebody who legitimately, I'm an old lady now, I no longer work in finance, but even for me back in the day, this seemed sus. I just want people to make smart decisions. And welcome to the chat, Beans. I feel like YouTube gave guys like this platforms. And while CoffeeZilla, I'm sure because he's smart, will stay safe from the demonetization train. When you've got assholes like Logan Paul who legitimately run a podcast where they can lie for an hour about how they're the victims, how this expose didn't even talk about how one of these guys and their testimonials was a scammer too, and it's like he kept it to the facts that this crypto zoo didn't work well when it was launched, took a lot of people's money, made a lot of claims that could never come to fruition. You're telling people that if they put their real money in these weird pictures of animals in your zoo, they can turn that into a profit. And people didn't think to pause and go, that doesn't sound right. Because he picked on the young, the people who really aren't political savvy, and people who just want to chase that clout that he was blaming CoffeeZilla for, and it's a mess. But this week, a mess isn't just involving YouTubers. I wish it was. I feel like a lot of us know what I'm going to be talking about tonight, it wouldn't shock anybody with a brain the way this week has gone. And this was just from last night. I made this clip last night because I was flabbergasted like everybody else. And this was when we were on chapter 11 of this ongoing Republican drama of McCarthy really wants to be speaker, but nobody else wants him to be speaker. And for some reason, Matt Gertz and one of the Muppets, I'm not sure if it's Green or Bonnet at this point. I can't tell those two idiots apart. I don't care. They're interchangeable dumb as far as I'm concerned. But they keep nominating Trump, which I replaced with a turd emoji because that's all he is to me. And you're getting all these weirdos pontificating about how the Republicans are the party of Lincoln, and that brother man that was up there literally being the House Negro for them, embarrassing himself and getting his ancestral card revoked. It has been a sideshow and circus and an embarrassment, but not for the people that the media try to portray. Because there has been a lot of talk about how the Democrats need to come together and work on the other side and get this over with. And it is not the Dems' job. And I'm sorry, I would rather be viewed as hard to work with at this point. I would rather the Dems be the bad guys to the point where they are deemed, oh, shutting down Congress because they won't send 7 over to give McCarthy his win. Because if we did that at this point, we would be deemed weak. Oh, look at them rolling over. We told you they're one and the same. They cannot win in this situation. And I need people to understand as you hear my voice in this. This is not an easy topic. The fact that we lost a house by such narrow means is already troublesome. And I know for some of my watchers who don't understand American politics, we have both a House and a Senate. It's a way of checks and balances so that if something passes in the House but isn't really good for the American people, the Senate can shut it down and vice versa. And normally it's supposed to be a functioning organization, but unfortunately, because we are still 50 states trying to act like one whole ass country, but really aren't getting it together, we sometimes have representatives like the Muppets, like Matt Gertz, who really should be disqualified from holding office anyway because he still has an alleged child trafficking ring issue to deal with. We're not sending our best. And the fact of the matter is, if we help this literal deranged ring of people who literally were there inspiring the January 6th insurrection, which today just happens to mark the 2-year anniversary of, we are the ones that get kicked in the behind for it. Now, we have somebody who keeps consistently getting more votes in Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, very well spoken, very eager to not only reach across and work with people, but wants to get work done. This shuts down swearing in new Congress and representative people. This is shut down getting effective legislature put forth. This is a complete standstill for one man's ego. And while I see a lot of people in the media trying to make it where, oh, the Dems need to buck it up and do the right thing, they know the moment they do this, the media will turn on this and call them weak. So I want our party to hold the line. I want our people to understand that holding the line means, yeah, stuff isn't going to get done. But they are not the majority. The Republicans are. The disarray is coming from the GOP. We need to remind ourselves of that when it comes time to vote. We play these games too much, and they play these games for years, telling people, oh, you don't have to be politically invested. You don't have to pay attention to any of this. And the fallout of this is a Congress that we finally got the majority of, that we have senators that will try to do their job that can still be deadlocked by Republicans if they try, and a House that is completely full of madness, including that George Santos guy, which I am still convinced at this point that he is not who he said he is. And I will not be shocked if we find out that he's somebody else and just assumed that name and identity. And yes, I've seen that weird Nazi symbol picture that he took to that. I'm not shocked. He was put in that position for a reason. They needed somebody who will say yes. That is all he's good for. They already know he can lie through the skin of his teeth. And I don't just mean small embellishments. He's lied about his education. He's lied about the jobs he's handled. He's lied about owning real estate. He's lied about his charitable organization. The man's whole life is a fabrication. And instead of his party condemning him, they're like, no, no, we're gonna push it past. I've seen more pictures of that man either looking bored, confused, especially when they called his name and he didn't. He was like, "Oh, oh, I guess they mean me." Yeah, that's the name. That's the alias I got today. It is a mess. And when you add all the stuff that we should be doing in this new year, especially considering the anniversary of a literal insurrection on our capital, it's really insidious that we are legitimately wasting time with a man who helped with the election denying cries, who had literally had his turd buddy Trump beg people to give him the votes, and they were like, no, we're not going to do this. We'll put you on the list instead, because for some reason our House of Representatives thinks it's smart for people to be able to just nominate anybody out the blue. Like, we need to stop playing these games. We're obviously not dealing with a whole deck of adults when it comes to GOP. And then you have idiot clowns like Robert Wright weighing in about how the Democrats need to nominate Barack Obama, like Hakeem Jeffries already has a solid base of Dems who keep voting. The only reason why he had a little less votes today is because some people were out sick. But to say that we need to play the same games as the GOP, I want people to stop playing the narrative that they're one and the same. The parties are not the same. And when you got people with power and influence trying to throw in their little jokes because they think this is clown show is funny, it not only makes me pause, but it upsets me on such a deep level, because this isn't a game. These are grown people who are supposed to be representing their state, wasting our time. You got Kevin McCarthy, who, even if he finally wins, because supposedly at 10 o'clock tonight, we're going to resume this crap show, and we're already up to 13 votes that told him no. Point blank, we don't want you. But for some reason, we still need 218 votes to get this show on the road. We're never going to convince 6 Republicans to open their eyes and stop playing these games and just support Hakeem Jeffries and get the show on the road. So we are in a deadlock with a bunch of deadbeat idiots who get paid, the ones who are sworn in, and who are sitting there wasting time if they are a junior representative because they are officially not sworn in yet. All because Kevin McCarthy can't read a room. We don't want the type of person who denies our political process as Speaker of the House, especially following an intelligent, strong speaker like Nancy Pelosi was. But that's all the Republicans have to offer. And I know that if you're watching me and you're a GOP supporter or you're semi-conservative, because I know I still have a few followers left that are for some strange reason, despite the incompetence, I know that you've had 50 years of their drivel about moral majority and crap. I can't help you. I can't help you see past this dysfunction at this point. 13 times this man put his ego above his own party, and he's not even the worst one. Because when you legitimately look at the opposition, the people that are causing him the most problems, people like the Freedom Caucus, who he had to give a whole bunch of concessions. Right underneath this, you see his PAC gave hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's literally bribing these people, and they're rejecting him. But when you look at some of the individuals that he's courting, like Matt Gaetz, like Barber, like Green, and you see how dirty their paperwork is, things like income fraud, owning businesses that they probably shouldn't, being literal millionaires when you were supposed to be a House of Representative member, It is insidious the way the GOP has been the party of getting their profits for way too long. And now they have a minute majority control of our House. And all they want to do is stall. And they have given us a whole week of stalling. This is going to be indicative of 2023, y'all. It's sad. And it shouldn't have gotten this bad. But we legitimately, as of tonight, because I couldn't believe this nonsense. I was like, as of tonight, additional support, but still takes a 13th vote for Speaker. And for some reason, people still want to blame the Democrats for this failing of the House majority group, which is the GOP. Because I like to remind people, yet again, most of our media are owned by conservative organizations. Whether it is, oh God, what is the name? I used to know them, Sinclair Group. There's only one Koch brother left, but I'm pretty sure he still funnels whatever devil money he's made into stuff. There is a whole ton of beings that they have an emotional investment at this point. This is embarrassing, but I'm going to leave this up for a bit. Let me move it over here, y'all. There's a whole bunch of people with money who have an investment in making sure that people believe that both sides are just as bad, even if we continuously prove that's not the case, even as we have watched a week of stagnation and literal chaos. I want people to start being more politically active and aware, even if it troubles you, even if you don't understand everything. You need to know who's representing you. You need to make sure that they're there to do that job. And if you don't like them, fine. I am not here to convince people who vote how to vote. I refuse. That is the hill that I will die on to my dying day. Nobody tells me who and how to vote for. So I don't feel that it is my job to guide grown folks on where to tally their ballot. But to be informed and to actually vote is all I've ever said to people. But when you see clear signs of instability, of egos, of people who do not want to get the job done and represent your state in a proper way, that reflects on you. None of my state representatives were there acting a fool. And sadly, I'm about to lose a senator who has not only helped my family, but has been really good to the state I'm living in. But she has decided to retire. So now, hopefully, somebody who steps into her shoes will be able to continue the good work that Senator Stabenow has done. I am personally going to miss her. When I first moved to Michigan over 5 years ago, I was nervous. I lived in the South for 20 years. I had come out of a really bad situation, and I was worried fleeing the South with everything that I was leaving behind, the fears of my ex and everything I had to deal with. And like a lot of women in that same situation, you get caught up by a lot of stuff. They still are trying to find him for child support, which is like, just stop. You can't get blood out of stone. And I would much rather him not know where I'm at directly. So please don't put me and my child into that kind of danger. Thank you very much. And when I wrote to Senator Stabenow my situation, which is hardly unique, a lot of people have come from those kind of situations. People can understand the anxiety that you feel when you've got the state telling you that if you want to get any kind of help from your child, whether it's insurance or medical stuff, you have to deal with your abuser, and it's not okay. And when I reached out to her, not only did her office help me, but they started working on legislation for people who have escaped those kind of situations. And that is the kind of people that you should be voting for. That's the kind of people you should be electing. It is personal to me to have representatives that not only hear you, but want to work with you. In Michigan, we have our yahoos too. I remember going off a few months ago about that Republican right up the county from us that decided to write me back when I clearly was upset about the school shooting 2 years ago that took 7 lives. And I wanted us to have stricter rules about minors having access to assault weapons, not guns. I keep reminding people, being from a military family, having registered gun ownership is normal in my family. So I'm not anti gun ownership. I'm anti idiotic gun ownership. I think if you're a parent and you allow your teenager to have access to your weapons, you should be charged like that teenager when they do the inevitable dumb crap that this young kid did 2 years ago and took the lives of teachers and students. I wrote a very detailed letter about how we need to start putting the safety of our children ahead of our egos. How smart gun ownership shouldn't be a problem. How registering yourselves shouldn't be a problem if you really want to own those pieces. How people need to pay a price if they put weapons into the hands of underage kids, and how we need to make it harder for anybody between the age of 18 to 25 to just load up on weapons. Nothing I suggested stops grown people from buying weapons. Nothing I suggested said gun ownership bad. But I had a Republican legitimately reach out to me telling me how I was wrong and how he disagreed. And I was like, you know what? Thank you for shining a light on yourself. I'm going to make sure that whoever's primarying you for the opposition gets all the play. Because that's how you handle people like that. I could have wrote him back angrily for denying a literal school shoot and to stroke his ego about guns are good and you people bad. Instead, I am going to work hard to make sure that less men like that are wasting our time in the halls of Congress. That is the way to stick it to these people who legitimately stand around with AR-15 family pictures. And what I loved is a friend of mine photoshopped another congressman who proudly put his family standing around with those guns, holding adult toys instead. Because that's all that looks like to me. Guns are not toys, they're not accessories, they are legitimate weapons. Having my grandfather put one in my hands when I was younger and showing me how to shoot and telling me very blankly that these are not for play. When you put this in your hand, you are putting it in your hand with intent. The intent is to take a life because that is what it is used for. And I know some people think, oh, that sounds horrible, Ten, but it really is what you have to do when you train somebody with something like that. These are not toys. You shouldn't be playing around and posing with them. You shouldn't be taking TikTok videos with them in your hands. These are not accessories for you to take Christmas pictures with. These are literal tools to destroy life. And if you don't see them in that way, you shouldn't own them. Point blank, period. And I will never change my stance on that because I feel too many people play around with weapons and they don't understand the impact of having a weapon. Any weapon that me and my family own, even if it's for defense, always comes with the fact that it is there to be used if I am put in that situation. I don't want to be put in that situation, but it's a lie for people to act like that's not the intent. And the problem with our country right now is a lot of people want to put up veneers and illusions on what gun ownership means and why they own guns and how this will never happen to them until it does. They want to ignore the red flags that their young one gives off. And I'm sorry, even my son, who I think is the sweetest, most gentlest soul in the world, can sometimes get edgy and angry at the slightest provocation. And while I don't think he has the wherewithal to even think to harm other people, you never know. You are not them. And too many people ignore the signs of their child's trouble until it's too late. That young man who I just talked about in Michigan, Jordan, I believe his name was, left several messages to both teachers and anybody who would listen. And while they knew he needed help, while they knew he was disturbed and he was just not fitting in, nobody helped him. And I am not saying that as an excuse, because I'm going to get to the whole idea of people talking about mental health and everything else when it's bad. But the fact of the matter is, there were enough grown people who knew this young man was hurt and spiraling, and nobody helped him. And then he turned to the one thing he thought would get him notoriety, would get him, I don't know. I can't speak for his mind. All I know is that 7 people paid with their lives. 7 people buried their kids before Christmas 2020 because we don't do enough for mental health crisis. It's troublesome, y'all. And then when you've got stuff like that dude being a literal house Negro for our representatives, it just comes full circle how troubling this week has been. But with all of this, I've seen a lot of people talking about mental health. I'm very open about my mental health journeys because I'm not ashamed of it anymore. And I know, being as old as I am, being a Gen Xer especially, a lot of people from my generation or older still think it's taboo. You're not supposed to talk about that kind of stuff, Tin. You're not supposed to be open with your illness. You're supposed to hide it. But hiding it does nothing, because everybody who hears the word schizo, if they're not using it in a joking context or fear context, because Hollywood loves to portray us as killers and attackers and stuff. I see more about conversations about mental health in the negative, and it's frustrating. Then when you add the people who want to talk about homelessness, they just want to have a conversation instead of actual solutions. They want to talk about how we literally waste thousands of dollars. 31,000, I believe, was the last quote I seen, on ways to police and criminalize homelessness, when it would only take about $10,000 to actually build and house people successfully. But there are so many not in my backyard Americans that, oh, we don't want that. Those people might lower the cost of our neighborhoods, and we've got to flex. The level of entitlement that people still feel, yet you take the Twitter talking about your resistors and you care about people. Yeah, you care about people as long as you get hearts and thumbs up on a social media app. But when it comes to actually voting for people who want to build these things so that homeless people can stop being homeless in what's supposed to be a first world nation, it's crickets. And then when you tie it into mental health, because a lot of homeless people, my biggest fears was getting to the point where I'm not lucid and ending up on the streets. I worked very hard for that not to happen, but it is a reality for people with my disorder. Schizophrenia will sometimes take your mind to places that feel amazing and magical. It is a weird way to be, and the only thing I can truly explain to you about it is, between scattered thoughts and sometimes hearing things, my mind sometimes puts me in a situation that feels like it happened, but it didn't happen. That's the best way I can put it. And there are a lot of, there's millions of people here and abroad that struggle with this disorder. It is sad that people only want to have the conversation about what it's like to live like this when somebody does a school shooting or a mass shooting, which is way too commonplace here in America. When you get one of these ladies on TikTok going on a racist rant against somebody. When you got that gentleman that walked up to a couple in In-N-Out who just happened to be Asian and called himself a slave master and attacked them. There was just a whole bunch of nonsense. And then people want to go, well, we need to have a conversation about mental health. Because a lot of you still think mental health is a choice. A lot of you forget the illness part of this. You wouldn't tell somebody who broke their leg or has an internal illness like cancer or any severe illness that you can see to just stop doing it, toggle it off. You wouldn't associate somebody with cancer that's just an asshole representing everybody with cancer. Yet somebody who just happens to be awful with a mental health issue tends to be indicative of all of us. And I tend to remind people all the time, you're looking at somebody with literal schizophrenia. Me surviving this long is weird. Most people who deal with what I deal with do not last long. We either get into bad situations, which I had to escape from, or we off ourselves, which is a real situation. It's something that I will struggle with forever. I have gotten a lot better. I have a supportive partner. I have supportive friends. I cut off contact with toxic family members. And that was a Tuesday. I had show notes going and everything. And then I got a huge ass lawyer package yet again. And this time they wanted a response from me, which I still refuse. It's bad enough they know where I live because I made the mistake of helping an aunt get guardianship of my grandmother, who back then was in the late stages of dementia. I couldn't handle taking care of her. I realized that dealing with my mom at the time. I was not prepped to take in another adult who would need that kind of attention. And I was working on getting my mother out of the house because of all the trauma and nonsense I was going through with her. So I easily said, fine. My aunt seems to have a good head on her shoulder. I didn't know what was going on in New York. Let me sign off that paperwork. Didn't realize they were going to have access to where I live. Found out my grandmother died last year through this paperwork. The incapacitated person, as they continue to call her. And then today, because they're suing each other left, right, and center over properties and ownership of crap and wanting to set up a trust, I don't want no parts of this. I found out my grandmother was freaking dead because of a lawyer bill. I really, really don't know how to convey to you how maddening that is. How watching people greedily fight over stuff that they didn't work for, that they think they're entitled to, put my name to something that I've never even shown interest in. These same people years ago told the judge when my dad died and they wanted hands on his estate, which sadly a lot of it was nefarious money anyway, so I didn't care. Maybe if you had asked me, I would have been like, yeah, go claim his estate. I don't want to deal with where he got that money. But you didn't. You told the judge I didn't exist. My parents never married, and that my sisters and I were not who we said we were. You had to change that up for these legal documents. Now my name, my sister's name, not the one that passed, thank goodness, all over the place. Now you want to act like we're family because there's tax liens and this property has this much, and I don't want no parts of that. And I'm sorry, y'all, if I'm getting a little more personal because I know certain people have been watching, have been following me on Twitter. I've seen y'all. But I need to make it clear that this week was harder than it should have been because of this nonsense. I had a guy bang on my door last month with the same level of booklet beforehand in his police uniform, which already made me tense because that was one of the threats my mom made against me. So I didn't really need that stress, but here he was making sure I got my hands on that paperwork that I really don't care about because I am not involving myself in this money fight. I don't want no parts of it. I haven't even been in New York for over 20 years. Don't want it. I feel like if I got myself any more involved than I already have, I will be sunk back into that toxic quagmire of whatever this is. So if you're auntie watching tonight or whenever I upload it to YouTube, leave me alone. I'm not interested. I feel stressed out as it is, trying to look through that paperwork, seeing if I had to sign off on anything, respond to anything. I know that a friend of mine told me they just legally have to let me know because it could have been a will or something. I don't know. I'm one of the first grandchildren that were born into the family. I'm not the first. I certainly have elders, but I'm one of the first from his first or whatever. I don't know the reasoning. All I know is that I wasn't privy to any of that. I left New York in 1995 and I did not look back, save to go to a couple of funerals here and there. I haven't even been back in New York since 2011, I believe. No, because we did that in Georgia. It was 2010 when an uncle of mine passed. I haven't seen my hometown in a long time. And I've set boundaries with my relatives because of all the fuckery that y'all put me through. Allah will pray for you when I needed help years ago, and yet you turned around and needed my help for stuff. And use a very quid pro quo when it suits you, but don't have it turned on you. The emotional manipulation of dealing with a narcissistic parent, and that was both of them. But fortunately for me, the other one died long ago. And unlike George Santos, who lies about his mom dying on 9/11, my father actually did pass on that date. He wasn't in any of the buildings, though. And because he died on that date, when an obvious historical horror show happened, we got a delayed notification of his death because he was pushed back. They were still trying to find actual bodies that were in the buildings. It is sad, some of the things that I remember dealing with my family, and that's why I set a hard boundary, and that's why a lot of my posts on both post and Twitter were about protecting my peace, because I knew that the people that I grew up with, the people that I used to feel close and trying to build bonds with, won't try to protect my peace. And as I move towards doing things for myself, whether it is my writing or entertainment purposes, I do not want them invading said peace. That's why I have a living will. I know my grandmother chuckled before she passed about me getting that drafted. But after dealing with my family for as long as I have, seeing how they act when an elder starts to show signs, knowing my own health issues, and how people love to throw around power of attorney, before I got a partner, it was always my fear that I was going to have somebody from my family step in and decide they're going to be in charge of me. I didn't want that. So I decided, while I still have what's known as sound mind, to get a will. And I don't regret that. And I'm telling you now, especially now that we are in the digital age and there are plenty of not only free but near free, because you're never going to get a good will free. Pony up a couple of dollars. You can even get some for 50 and under. Get a living will. If you are 40 and over like I am, there's absolutely no excuse. Even if you think you don't own a lot of stuff, even if you think it's not going to matter, it matters because you don't want to throw your family in the chaos. If something happened to me today, kiddo's only a month away from turning 18. But I had it in place for somebody to take him in that isn't family. His godmother had my back for years now, on the ready if something happened to me, to take him in, and knew that I had the paperwork to where it couldn't be contested. I'm sure they would have tried, but because I made the choice to make a will and detail who I wanted to have custody versus who I wanted to be in charge of finance, because that was another thing that I loved about this will. I could put one friend who I knew was financially responsible in charge of that, one friend who wanted custody of the kiddo, and know that my son would be taken care of even after I'm not here. It's sad that we have to think on that level, especially as I write the next story where I've already established that humans develop the technology to get past the whole idea of death. we're not there. I probably won't actually see anything like that outside my imagination. So I have to prepare for the realities. And when I think about the last 3 years and how fragile life is and how determined some people are to pretend like sickness isn't happening, even as they're giving the next variant cute names like Kraken, the reality of the situation is I'm glad that I had the wherewithal to plan for this. Because the reality is nothing is promised, nothing's infinite, and we only have a short amount of time on this earth. And you need to prepare for your family to go on without you, and for your friends if they're integral part. Because for me, my friends are my family now. They weren't the family that I was born into, but they were the family that I chose to surround myself with. They have been supportive. We don't fight with one another. There's no toxic leaning on one another. It is refreshing coming from where I used to be. The emotional manipulation that you used to put up with. And I know it feels like a heavy topic, but too many in our community don't talk about that. How the pressure is put upon you to just look the other way, to forgive and accept toxic behaviors, even when the toxic behaviors put your house in danger. I refuse. And I will remain the person that they talk bad about, the villain of the story, all they want. What I won't be is the doormat anymore, the doorway to whatever nonsense. Close that door, and I'm not opening it. I need more people to understand that it's okay to grieve. I told another friend this. That's one of the things I love about Twitter is so many people are able to share their journey. And she's dealing with cutting off a toxic parent. A lot of people think it's easy. There were times where I cried. I cried when I watched her leave. I cried when I thought about how hard it was to not be able to be the responsible eldest child and take care of her selfishly. I cried when I thought I'm going to cut off all contact, and the next thing I'll hear is when she's gone because I can't deal this anymore. And I let go. Yeah, there's always going to be guilt because you're raised to believe that it's your place to do this. But it is unfair if, especially they're toxic, that you continue on this role that A isn't your place. And if you're having kids with the idea that when you're old and broken down that they're supposed to take care of you, you need to be a better person. Because far too many people in our community think I can be abusive and harmful to my child. I can treat them like complete dirt and garbage, but they'll still feel obligated to take care of me when I'm old. And no, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. I know I'm unpacking a lot on y'all tonight, but I feel like after this week, not just watching our capital go through this nonsense, not just dealing with all the news stories, but my personal life really keeps reinforcing to me that at 45, I am not going to keep dealing with these stressful factors. I have watched way too many people who should still be here and aren't leave before they got to do everything they wanted to do in the joys of their lives. I want to get to that place. And I can't do that letting people who are toxic, manipulative, fighting over money pull me back into their chaos. I'm going to have my own, and I'm going to make sure that they have no access to it. And fortunately for me, I have a strong support system. But even if I didn't, even if I was by myself, they raised me to be that bitch. And that is the kick in the ass that they probably have for them. All the hardness came from the way you raised me. All the able to just cut you off is from the way you treated me. If you want to look at any factor to why I could say I don't need this. Look no further than yourselves. I really hope that if you are in this situation tonight, or whenever I rebroadcast this and you're listening, and you realize that you can't deal with the toxic person, whether it's a friend, whether it's a lover, whether it's a relative, it is okay to walk away. It might feel hard. It might feel like it's the most impossible thing in your life. But it gets better. It gets lighter. You start to realize that they cannot keep bringing you into their circus. You can observe, like I did this week, from the outside, shaking my head at this nonsense. But then you realize you're no longer in the middle of it. You, like the Dems, to bring it back full circle, who are literally watching their GOP cohorts act like an idiot. You do not have to put yourself in a no-win situation. You don't have to worry because you're the bad guy no matter what. You can stand firm in your beliefs that helping them does nothing but invite the toxic, invite them believing that you're weak, like my family loves to do. Any signs of being nice, any signs of being helpful is deemed a weakness. And you know what? This hard shell was forged by your fuckery. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up a little bit early tonight, y'all. I really appreciate all of you joining me, the first Bonnet Chronicles of 2023. Like I said, I wish I had met up with y'all on Tuesday when this all started, but it's even funnier that I got to sit through 13 losses of Kevin McCarthy. And I am sure that it will not be a slow news day between here and next Tuesday. We should be starting our static group back up for Sundays. For those who follow me and watch me on the D&D adventures, our static group are running through Tabaxi Live, so it'll be fun. But I am going to get ready to go make some dinner, relax. Saturday is a day off. Going to do some housework. I really hope that you have a good weekend and a good start to your 2023. Respect, Beans, Blue, everybody who stops in. Thank you so much. HB Dollars, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate everybody who gives these talks a chance. I know the topic of politics and social issues isn't everybody's cup of tea, and so many of my friends come in and support this show. I don't know how much more YouTube will be more than a video hosting site for me. I don't intend on ever being YouTube famous, but I will continue to upload these to YouTube just so that people know that they can watch the rebroadcast of this. I definitely appreciate being able to give you these because I think a lot of people think that politics and social issues have to be complicated, and they're not. And I try to break it down in a matter of fact way. I don't want to lead people one way or the other. I know where I lead. I know where I feel on the spectrum of both politics and social. I can convey that without telling people, you have to be like me. I never trusted anybody that does that because you should lead by example, not by orders. I refuse. My grandpa fought fascism, literally in World War II. So I've been driven to protect people from that ideology of follow my lead. It works for me, so it'll work for you. I've never trusted people like that. I still won't. But I'm going to get ready to definitely wrap this up. I will be back on Tuesday, and I appreciate that, HV. I think I try to explain it because a lot of my friends from overseas, it is confusing. The stuff that we're going through in our current Congress makes absolutely no sense. To anybody outside, they're like, why can't these people just get it together? And what we are seeing is an ideological power struggle that makes them look foolish. So I'm hopeful that instead of people focusing on how embarrassing it is for all of us, that people are reminded that this is the GOP. This is who they've always been, and we all need to work on our local elections better. But I'm gonna get ready to wrap this up. I will be back on Sunday with my D&D group, static group for Sundays in Salona, and then back on Tuesday with the all new Bonnet Chronicles. I was trying to give Axiom time to get the gem fired up, but I think he's asleep at the wheel. So I will see you all next Tuesday. Thank you all for sitting. There he goes. Sometimes you gotta get your mod awake. All right. I'm not sure if it's playing or not. I appreciate that, sweetie. All right. Thank you so much. Sorry about them audio issues. I will definitely see you on Tuesday if you stop by for another Bonnet Chronicles or Sunday for D&D. You have a great weekend.